Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be going through 5 true school lockdown horror stories. So if you like scary stories, please make sure to leave a like rating, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting off in our 5th story, we have the faceless boy. When I was in 2nd grade, we had a lockdown because of a kid who snuck into the school by dressing up as an employee. We were having lunch and all of a sudden the principal came over the intercom and told us to stay in our seats. She said that there was a lockdown and that we shouldn't worry, that everything would be fine. Then she told us to put our heads down on our desks and stay silent. That's what we did. About an hour later, my mom picked me up from school and asked what happened. Apparently, this guy got into the school by pretending to be a worker. He then went to one of the classrooms and held some kids hostage with a knife. The police ended up finding him in the music room, and all of the kids that were in his classroom were okay. But before they let us go, the cops made us walk through the entire school so that we could see if anyone was injured or left behind. My mom says that the sight of me walking through those hallways with a bunch of other traumatized kids, that will forever be imprinted in her memory. I don't remember much about it, but I do remember seeing the bloodied knife that he used. I also remember how scared my classmates were. One of them even wet herself. Then, after the police made us walk through the entire school, they took us outside to line up against the wall while they interviewed us individually to see if any of us had seen anything. I remember my mom panicking because they wouldn't let her come and comfort me until they were done with their investigation. After that, they finally let us go home and I never saw any of those kids again. It's weird, because at the time, I didn't realize how serious the situation really was. All I knew was that I wasn't allowed to talk. And when I got home, I threw up all over the floor. I was shaking and crying, and I couldn't stop asking my mom why I couldn't talk. Well, apparently the police thought that this guy might have been targeting certain kids. They weren't sure. And they wanted to see if there was anything that we saw that maybe we weren't supposed to see. They were also trying to figure out if it was random or if he was targeting certain kids. They wanted to see if there was anything that we saw that maybe we weren't supposed to see. Eventually, they figured out that it wasn't personal and that he just randomly picked a classroom to hide in. They also learned that he only had a knife and that he didn't hurt any of the kids that he took hostage. However, he did threaten to harm himself, but the police managed to talk him down. I read online that the man was an ex-employee of the school and that he was mad that they fired him. He planned on harming himself and taking some kids with him. The thing is, though, is that he didn't want to hurt the kids. He just wanted to scare everyone at the school. He was charged with multiple counts of unlawful imprisonment and possession of a prohibited weapon. After that day, the school added more security measures and started doing active shooter drills. It's crazy to think that such a traumatic event happened at my school, but I'm just glad that I'm okay. In our 4th story, we have a school shooting. I was in elementary school when a shooting happened in a school not too far away from ours. We were in class when the fire drill alarm went off, so we lined up and walked out to the field where we were told to lay on the grass, hands behind our heads, and turn our palms up. At first, my classmates and I were confused, but then we heard sirens and realized what was happening. A few minutes later, one of our teachers came out and told us that there had been a shooting at the nearby school, but that we were safe here. We were kept out there for hours. I remember being cold, hungry, and scared. None of the adults would tell us anything, so we had no idea if we were going to be next. I was only 7 years old, and I remember thinking that maybe the shooter was going to not come to our school next. I remember laying there and looking up at the sky, thinking that my life was going to end soon. I also remember someone bringing out a big speaker and playing Christmas music. I remember thinking that it was weird that they were playing Christmas music while we were laying there. I also remember someone saying, "Don't move," and I turned my head and saw a dead mouse. I was terrified. I remember thinking that it was a sign that we were going to be next. Eventually, we were taken to another school and then we were sent home on the bus. When I got home, my parents were there waiting for me. I remember throwing myself at my dad and crying. I was so relieved to see him. I was so scared that I wasn't going to make it out alive. When I got home that night, I refused to sleep in my bed. I slept in a sleeping bag on the floor next to my parents' bed. I didn't feel safe in my own bedroom. I felt like the shooter was gonna come to my house and get me. I remember waking up the next morning and feeling like I had to tell someone what happened. So I went to my teacher and told her everything. She told me that I was doing a great job, staying strong, and that everything was gonna now be okay. But I could tell that she was crying while she said it. I was only 7 years old, and I didn't understand why she was lying to me. I didn't understand why nobody was telling me the truth. Well, the reason why they didn't tell me the truth is because they didn't know the truth. There wasn't a shooter. It was a madman who came in through an unlocked door and shot the principal and vice principal. He then barricaded himself in the library and held the kids hostage. The police eventually got him out and he surrendered. The principal passed away, but everyone else was okay. After that, the school added more security measures and we had to go through active shooter drills. But I still remember that day like it was yesterday. In our third story, we have school lockdown due to gunshots. I was in second grade and there was a school lockdown because of gunshots being fired near the school. We were in class when the lights suddenly went out. I was sitting by the window and I looked outside and saw a man running towards the school while holding a gun. I quickly ducked under my desk and covered my head with my arms. Then I heard a loud bang and another one and another one. Then the lights came back on and the teacher told us to stay in our seats and not to say a word. I was shaking and crying, but I didn't make a sound. After a few minutes, the teacher opened the door and peeked out into the hallway. Then she closed the door and told us to stay quiet and that we were going to be okay. I don't remember how long we were locked down for, but it seemed like forever. Eventually, the teacher opened the door again and told us to walk down the hallway and line up against the wall. I was so scared that I couldn't move. I was frozen in place. The teacher knelt down and asked me if I was okay and if I needed help. I shook my head and she helped me stand up and walk to the hallway. When we got to the end of the hallway, we were met by 2 police officers. They checked us one by one to make sure we were okay. Then they led us outside to the playground. I remember thinking that maybe we were going to be okay now. But then I heard sirens and saw a bunch of police cars. I started crying again. Then a woman came over and knelt down and asked me if I was okay. I shook my head and she hugged me. I cried and cried and cried. Then she took me over to a man who I think was my dad. He wrapped me in the tightest hug ever and I felt safe. Well, it turns out that there was a fight between 2 groups of people near the school and gunshots were fired. Nobody was hurt, but the school was placed on lockdown as a precaution. I'll never forget that day. It was one of the scariest days of my life. In our second story, we have the bathroom lockdown. I was in middle school and there was a lockdown because a student brought a gun into the bathroom. I was in class when the bell rang for bathroom break. As I got up to go, I heard a loud bang. I didn't think anything of it. Time, so I went to the bathroom. As I walked in, I saw a bunch of students gathered around the sinks. They were all whispering and looking scared. I asked what happened, but nobody said anything. Suddenly, a girl I knew ran past me and shouted, "Run!" I didn't know what was going on, but I started running down the hallway. I heard more bangs and saw students running in the opposite direction. I didn't know where to go. I was confused and scared. Suddenly, a teacher I knew appeared and grabbed my arm. She pulled me into her classroom and closed the door. She turned off the lights and told us to stay quiet. I was shaking and crying, but I didn't make a sound. We stayed in that classroom for what felt like forever. Eventually, the teacher opened the door and told us to line up against the wall. I walked out into the hallway and saw a bunch of police officers. They were searching the area and talking into their radios. I don't remember much after that. I guess they must have taken us to another classroom. I remember sitting on the floor and hugging a girl I went to school with. We were both crying and hugging each other tightly. Well, it turns out that a student brought a gun into the bathroom and accidentally shot himself. Nobody else was hurt, but the school was placed on lockdown as a precaution. I'll never forget that day. It was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. In our one story, we have the intruder. When I was in high school, there was a lockdown because a stranger tried to break into the school. It was around 1 p.m. and I was in class when the lights suddenly turned off. I was sitting by the window and I looked out and saw a man running towards the school. I quickly turned away from the window and told my classmates, "Lights out, intruder coming." Before they could react, the lights flickered back on and the teacher shouted, "Get under your desks." My heart was racing and I quickly crawled under mine. Within seconds, the room was filled with the sound of heavy footsteps and voices. I pressed my head against the floor and squeezed my eyes shut. All of a sudden, the door burst open and a man ran inside. He was tall and muscular and he was breathing heavily. He looked around the room frantically and shouted, "Where is she? Where is she?" I stayed perfectly still and kept my eyes closed. I didn't dare move or make a sound. Then the man ran out of the room as quickly as he had entered it. The teacher whispered, "Stay under your desks until I tell you otherwise." I waited what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes. Then the teacher opened the door and told us to walk out into the hallway single file. We were not allowed to say a word or make eye contact with anyone. As we made our way down the hallway, I could hear shouting and commotion. I was terrified, wondering what was going on. Finally, we were led outside to the football field, where we were told to sit on the grass. I remember thinking that this couldn't possibly be a drill. It was too real. I could still hear shouting and commotion, but I couldn't see anything. After a few minutes, we were told to stand up and run to the back of the school where we were met by our parents. I remember throwing myself at my mom and crying uncontrollably. I was so relieved to see her. I was so scared that I wasn't going to make it out alive. When I looked back, I saw the police entering the school. It was then that I realized that this wasn't a drill. This was the real deal. After everything was said and done, I found out that a man had somehow gotten into the school and was looking for someone. He had a history of violence and was known to be dangerous. The police were able to subdue him and take him into custody without incident. I was shaken, but unharmed. But I will never forget that day. The fear and uncertainty of not knowing what was going on or where my mom was, it was absolutely terrifying. But now it's time for you guys to make your voice heard. Comment below which one of these stories was the most terrifying to you. If you enjoyed this video, then please make sure to leave a like rating. And as always, thanks for watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.